My name is Bruce Allen. I was in the Royal Air Force for some time. I am now a docent here at the San Diego Air and Space Museum. And my presentation today is of the history of the American Eagle Squadrons. Charles Sweeney, strange guy, but with an international playboy and a golf pro. And he was the first person to persuade the British to form an American Eagle Squadron. His father, Robert Sweeney, provided the financial support and material support. The Eagle Squadrons, the idea, well, in Canada, Billy Bishop and Clayton Knight coordinated thousands of Eagle Squadron applications. Billy Bishop, of course, is a well-known First World War ace. Clayton Knight formed the Clayton Knight Committee, processed and approved 6,700 applications, bore the cost over $100,000 of processing and transportation. Eagle Squadrons flight training, the basic requirements, they had to have a high school diploma, they could read and write, aged between 20 and 31, 2040 vision correctable to 2020, and have 300 hours certified flying time, and that could be pretty much in any aircraft as long as they could fly. Eagle Squadron flight training. Basic flight training is done in Britain. Advanced operational training also. 3 aircraft are pretty much being used. The first one was the Miles Master Trainer, which is an oddball aircraft, as you can see from the screen. The co-pilot is sitting with his head up. That's a deliberate thing for training because he can look over the pilot's shoulder. Not very comfortable, though, I wouldn't think. But anyway, it was a good thing for teaching. And of course, it was the Hawker Hurricane, one of the best aircraft ever made, solid, carried the load. And of course, we can't forget the Supreme Spitfire. Beautiful aircraft, flew wonderful, but was later into the Battle of Britain than the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes carried a lot of the weight, as it were. The postings to the front line RAF squadrons as commissioned officers. And here we see one of them, American pilot, VC Shorty Coe. This gentleman is, let me say, doesn't have that much height, and he has to sit on 2 cushions in the Spitfire to get to the controls. But he was a brilliant pilot. He was a parachutist, did over 5,000 jumps in the US, and he became one of the Eagle Squadron's pilots. The American pilots retained their US citizenship. The RAF uniforms were modified with this badge, the Eagle Squadron badge, and that's what it means. King George designed this badge. That's the English King George. He designed that badge. Okay. Keogh was on a convoy protection mission during a chase on a Heinkel 111. He was last seen spinning off into the sea due to possible oxygen failure. He was only 29 years old. What a waste. Eagle Squadrons formation. 3 squadrons were formed between September 1940 and 41 as part of the Royal Air Force. As you can see here, we have 71 Squadron, 121 Squadron, and 133 Squadron. Now, the interesting thing about this, we now have a king on the throne now. This is the right shape of the crown. We'll see later the wrong shape. It's not that important, but it's interesting. Anyway, these 3 squadrons, the numbers will never be used again by the RAF. They have archived them because this was for a special reason. in the RAF, squadron numbers like the Dam Buster squadron number 111 has been used many times. And the way it worked is when the aircraft changes, then the squadron number goes with it. It's just one of those things. Okay. And those three squadrons operated from 1940 on roughly to 42 when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and then almost immediately they were transferred to the United States Air Force. Here's some information on the squadrons as they were. 71 Squadron, September 40, was operational in 41 for defensive duties, which meant pretty much all the way around France and that area and England. Based at RAF Church Fenton and moved to Curtin in Lindsey. April 40, transferred to the RAF Martlesham Heath in Suffolk for operations throughout Europe. That's just a brief thing. 121 Squadron formed at RAF Curtin in Lindsey in May of 41. They were flying Hurricanes on coastal convoy escort duties. Hurricanes were replaced with Spitfires. Mark V's arrived in November 41. The squadron moved to RAF North Weald, replacing 71 Squadron in 42. Its offensive activities over the English Channel included bomber escorts and fighter sweeps. Last but not least, 133 Squadron formed at RAF Coltishall in 1941. They moved to RAF Docent in August, re-equipped with Spitfire Mark V's in early 42. They were part of the RAF Biggin Hill wing. Now, Biggin Hill is a famous RAF station. It still exists, but not as a fighter base. It's more of a memorial area. In July 42, bomber escort missions to Abbeville. 26th of September 42, 11 of the unit's 12 brand new Spitfire Mark 9s were lost on a mission over Morlaix, which is in northern France, while escorting USAF Boeing B-17 flying fortresses in heavy cloud cover. So that was a tragedy, obviously, but okay, this map and then the next one shows you some information of where the aircraft were. The ones in red were the American Eagle stations. And these are the RAF Eagle Squadrons. Martlesham Heath, because of where it is, was used a lot for bases for the Spitfires, for the squadrons, for the normal fighter command. One of the very busy camps, which doesn't exist anymore. And every black thing, aircraft you see is Royal Air Force, red is the Americans. So this is an idea of how the squadrons were basically based in southern England. A second map shows UK RAF headquarters and fighter stations around 1940, and on the bottom here, German bomber and fighter stations. These diamonds were the high-level radar stations that dotted around the south coast mainly. And they were pretty good for their time. They were the big masts. And obviously this is Belgium, and these are all Luftwaffe. Eagle Squadrons, first loss, May 1940 over the Netherlands. Joined Fighter Command in June 1941. Now, up to this point, Fighter Command was a unique RAF squadron. Well, command. The Eagle Squadrons joined it in 41 to expand, hopefully, the defense. First American prisoner of war, June 21, 1941. First confirmed victory, July 21, 1941. Hurricanes and Spitfire Mark IIs replaced with Spitfire Mark V's, 1941. Squadrons had a high victory reputation. That meant they shot down a lot of German aircraft. This is from a picture we have in the Eagle Squadron display in the museum. Nice sketch drawing. Picked out this guy, Stern Anderson. This is worth looking at. It's in the Quonset hut, or Nissen hut, we call it, along with other memorabilia and information of the squadrons in the museum, of course. This was 71st Eagle Squadron. We don't have the other two squadrons like that. Stan was actually shot down by a Focke-Wulf 190 over the North Sea off the coast between Ostend and Blankenberg in 1944. He got the DSC with 3 oak and leaf clusters. His relatives donated all of Stan's memorabilia to the museum about 5 years ago. There. This Eagle Squadron notable pilot, these two pictures are the same guy, Edward Dale Taylor of 133 Squadron. This gentleman, who's not real, obviously, is squadron leader Stanford Tuck, RAF, who fought in the Battle of Britain and was an excellent pilot and got all the way up to Air Vice Marshal. And a hell of a guy. I met him once. There's the effects of E.D. Taylor, as I said, 133 Squadron, RAF. His sword. The interesting thing I mentioned earlier, look at these plaques. And look at the crowns on the crests. That is actually a Queen's crown. Now, up until a few months ago, that was right currently. But now we have a king, that changes again. Just one of those things. Typical information, medals and whatever you, a map. It's worth looking at in the museum. You will get a lot more information out of it, more information that. But one thing you will see is the ES badge, the Eagle Squadron patch badge, whichever. Okay. This guy we all know, I think. He was called the Flying Greek by his compadres. That's him. That's, I think, a lieutenant. Spyrus Nicholas Steve Pisano, 71 Squadron. He began his military flight training at Polaris Flight Academy in Glendale, California. Pilot Pisano's officer, which was an RAF rank, was transferred to England, where he completed RAF officers training, and also he was posted to a fighter squadron, 268 fighter squadron, flying P-51s. He later transferred to the 71 Eagle Squadron, so that's where the connection is here. Comprising of American volunteers flying Spitfires. He was an ace of January 44, 10th victory with the March, shot down, evaded for 6 months. He worked with the French resistance in France, obviously. He returned to England in September 44. He got, well, you can count them, but three Legion of Merits, 5 distinguished flying crosses, and of course, oh yeah, Purple Heart. Quite a guy. I wish I met him. He was around, but unfortunately he died before I got the chance. And this is the picture that is actually in our Nissen hut. It's a really nice picture. The Flying Greek, Steve Pisanis. Leroy Lee Gabber, 133 Eagle Squadron. It's Spitfire Mark V, Sondra, whoever that is. Captain Don Gentle, 133 Squadron with his Mark V Spitfire, which bore the name Buckeye Don. He had 27 kills. Know that. this gentleman, Carroll Red McCulkin, 71 Squadron by his Spitfire Mark V at North Wheel, and with the RAF wings. He later became the flight commander of 133 Eagle Squadron, and by the time of his transfer to the USAF in 42, it shot down 9 enemy aircraft. Harold H. Strickland, 133 and 71 Squadrons, RAF later 334th and 4th when it transferred to the American Air Force. William Albert Arends, I guess, 133 Squadron. He has an interesting cartoon with the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse on a horse. He referred to him and 3 buddies from his hometown area. Joseph L. Bennett, 133 Squadron, became Fighter Command 4th Fighter Group 336. Michael G.H. McFarlane was authentic. This is a sample of his logbook. A bit difficult to read. And the red bits, I think you can read. One of the most important things in this whole exhibit is this, the Spitfire. The key in 1940 Battle of Britain, they were designed for the Snyder Trophy. And that's why Mitchell, the designer, never saw it fly. He saw the prototype and that was it, and he died of cancer. What a waste. This is beautiful. Oil painting in the ops bunker showing the 3 squadron badges, and you can see them here and a Hurricane here. Some pilots. The RAF, the UK flag and the American flag. 1942, 40 to 42. And this is a Hawker Hurricane model, which is hanging up in the museum. And it's a gorgeous model, actually. It's showing the flaps down. And it was a British single-seat fighter of the 30s and 40s, was designed and predominantly built by Hawker Aircraft Limited for the RAF. While less heralded than the famous Supreme Spitfire, the Hurricane scored the majority of the RAF kills during the Battle of Britain in 1940. Powered, of course, by the Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. So was the Hurricane. All of the British aircraft, including the Lancaster bomber, used Merlins, 4 in their case. And I've been inside the only flying one in England. Okay, here is a copy, well, a replica of a Hawker Hurricane instrument panel and control stick. The Americans in the squadron found this difficult because it's odd. It's not a stick and like that, you know. It is a yoke. This button, of course, guess what? Fires the cannons. And you pull it back, turn it left, turn it right for the normal controls. Well, once you get used to it, it's easy to use. And it doesn't get in the way of anything else. And this is a nice representation, a sight. It's a gun sight. And all the normal sort of paraphernalia you need from a Mark I. And this is kind of the odd one out in this presentation. It's a P-51D, wonderful aircraft. It is, the livery is for the Muscatine Airmen, the red tabs. They flew convoys with bombers. The advantage of the P-51, it was faster than the Spitfire. About the same maneuverability, very reliable. And you'll see it's the same Hurricane and Merlin engine, but it's been souped up. And here's the P-51's instrument panel, very similar. And all along here are the aircraft. This is the P-47 of the 4th Fighter Group. The Eagle Squadrons on the left, the 4th Fighter Group. This is when it was transferred. All right, some facts on Eagle Squadrons. Of the 8 original pilots in the 3rd Squadron, 4 died during training. Not very good. 1 was disqualified and 2 died in combat, and 1 prisoner of war. About 100 Eagle pilots have been killed, were missing, or were prisoners. 29th of September, 1942. Eagle Squadron pilots did not have US pilot wings, which was true. Awarded USAF pilot wings upon their transfer. They retained the RAF wings in a reduced size on the opposite side of the uniform. So they had their USAF wings and RAF wings. The pilots of the 3 Eagle Squadrons wanted to stay together. That's reasonable. Pearl Harbor attack. Eagle Squadrons transferred from RAF to the 8th Air Force of the USAF. American pilots became officers in the USAF. Eagle pilots earned 12 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 1 Distinguished Service Order, and only 4 of the 34 original Eagle pilots were still present when the squadrons joined the USAF. So they lost them. The 71 and 121 and 133 squadrons were renamed by the USAF as 334, 335 and 336. The 4th Fighter Group flew Spitfires until its conversion to P-47s. Thunderbolts, that was the other one, was completed in April 43. All 3 USAF units switched to the P-51 Mustang by the second half of March 1944. And this is the badges, of course. 330, I can't say that. 334th, yeah. 335th and 336th. These are their patches, their badges. And the full fighter wing patch. Of the roughly 250 Americans who had served with the Eagle Squadrons, 78 had been killed while with the RAF, and 16 had become prisoners of war. A further 29 were killed after the transfer to the USAF, and 18 captured. American Eagle Squadrons remembered. This patch up here is of the Royal Air Force Club in London. They got the badges of the Royal Air Force 121 and 133 Eagle Squadrons, which was presented to them at the RAF Club in London on June 29th, 2018. The event was held in celebration of the RAF 100th anniversary and marks the date the US Army Air Corps Colonel Charles Sweeney wrote to the UK Air Ministry proposing the formation of RAF Fighter Squadron, comprised of American volunteers in 1940. This is the ceremony. This guy is the RAF Air Vice Marshal Jerry Mayhew of the Air Officer Commanding No. 1 Group, Royal Air Force. This is a picture of the presentation of the squadron badges. When the US entered World War II, the 3 Eagle Squadrons and the American pilots in them transferred to the US Army Air Force's 8th Air Force, forming the 4th Fighter Group in 42. Their proud heritage of service is carried on today by the 4th Fighter Wing, Fighter Bomber Group, and now the 48th Fighter Group through aircraft in support of operations in Europe, including the invasion of Normandy in 1944. And this is from the USAF Museum, showing the Eagle Squadron's memorabilia. Okay. The one thing missing is the small badge. Okay, and on the right here, a bit of a show. This was the 121 Eagle Squadron. They were flying Hurricanes, of course. Eagle Squadron, and there's Hurricane, and this is 71 Squadron, also flying Hurricanes at the time, but they all changed to Spitfires, and this is the list of the people. Now, Steve Pisano, the Flying Greek in the RAF Blues. This is him in the RAF uniform. But here he is in his USAF and as a general, taking the salute. It's the 4th Fighter Group, 1942 to 45. And this is a bit of, well, funny stuff. Eagle Squadron. Yes, there is a film of the Eagle Squadron. Maybe Robert Stack, I'm sure you probably know, Eddie Albert, Nigel Bruce, Lee Ferguson, all pretty much well-known stars. Now, this is a memorabilia to the Eagle Squadrons. And basically it says it's September 40, during the Battle of Britain, it was formed in Yorkshire, Royal Air Force Squadron manned by American volunteers. This was 71 Squadron, joined by 121 and 133. This is in London, UK, West 1, Grosvenor Square. This memorial is to the memory of the 244 American and 16 British fighter pilots and other personnel who served in the Royal Air Force, Eagle Squadrons, prior to the participation in the US States of America in the Second World War. They served with valor, they certainly did. This is a bit different, but it is. This is the story of the last Spitfire the RAF had flown after World War II. The Spitfire can be seen at the San Diego Aerospace Museum in the American Eagle display, of course. Built in at Castle Bromley, SL-574 was delivered into number 6 maintenance unit at RAF Bryce Norton on the August 1945 and placed in storage for the next 2 years, emerging to be issued to the Empire Air Armament School at RAF Manby in September 47, where it flew with the code FG-GU until 28th of October 48, when a Category B flying accident occurred. It crash landed on the Oxo cricket ground in Bromley in 1959. And there it is. The most interesting thing for me as a Brit, poor old Spitfire, right? He got out, he's good. They're still playing cricket. It was involved in the Battle of Britain, fly past over London, and for a long time afterwards, flights by Spitfires and Hurricanes over the city were banned because of this. This is what the stumps look like with the bayers and the cricket ball. And Oxo, remember that the sports ground belonged to Oxo. These are the broken stumps, not all of them, but there's 3 stumps and there's only 2 bits there. The stumps were presented by Oxo Limited to Headquarters Number 11 Group REO. They were broken during the forced landing of Spitfire SL-574, piloted by Air Vice Marshal H.J. Maguire. I'm not going to read all of it. On the Oxo Sports Ground at Bromley. The aircraft was taking part in the Battle of Britain flight past on the 20th of September 1959. And this was the last flight of a Spitfire by the RAF. I mean, Spitfires are flying by civilians, they've been reconstructed, but that is it. And finally, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Winston Churchill.